Lieutenant Commander Sarah Martinez stood at attention in the briefing room, her crisp Navy uniform pressed to perfection despite the early morning hour. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the faces of the assembled officers, but none were as stern as Admiral Richard Hawkins, who sat at the head of the polished oak table, like a judge ready to deliver a verdict. Sarah had worked 15 years to reach this moment. 15 years of proving herself in a world that questioned whether women belonged on the front lines of military operations. She had graduated top of her class from the Naval Academy, excelled in every assignment, and earned the respect of her peers through sheer determination and skill. Today, she was being considered for command of Operation Neptune's Trident, the most critical mission her unit had faced in decades. The operation involved coordinating with SEAL Team 6 to extract a high-value target from a hostile territory. Intelligence suggested the target possessed information that could prevent a major terrorist attack on American soil. The mission required someone who could think quickly under pressure, maintain communication with multiple units, and make split-second decisions that could mean the difference between success and catastrophe. Admiral Hawkins shuffled through the papers before him, his weathered face showing no emotion. He had served in the Navy for 35 years, rising through the ranks during an era when women were rarely seen in combat roles. His old-school mentality was well known throughout the fleet, and many younger officers whispered about his reluctance to embrace change. "Lieutenant Commander Martinez," he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority that comes with decades of command. "I've reviewed your file extensively. Your academic achievements are impressive, and your service record shows consistent performance." Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps her reputation had finally earned her the recognition she deserved. She had led successful operations in the Mediterranean, coordinated complex logistics in the Pacific, and had never lost a single person under her command. Her strategic mind and ability to remain calm under pressure had earned her commendations from superior officers and loyalty from her subordinates. The Admiral continued, "However, this mission requires more than classroom knowledge and administrative skills. We're talking about coordinating with the most elite fighting force in our military. These SEALs don't have time for hesitation or emotional decision-making." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had heard these subtle implications before, the suggestion that women were somehow more emotional or less capable of making tough decisions. She had spent her entire career proving otherwise, but it seemed that no amount of evidence could overcome deeply ingrained prejudices. "With all due respect, sir," Sarah said, maintaining her composure despite the frustration building inside her, "my record speaks for itself. I have successfully completed every mission assigned to me, often under extremely challenging circumstances." Admiral Hawkins leaned back in his chair, a condescending smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Of course, Lieutenant Commander, but this isn't about managing supplies or coordinating training exercises. This is about real combat, where lives hang in the balance and there's no room for the kind of sensitivity that might cloud judgment in critical moments." The other officers in the room shifted uncomfortably. Some looked down at their papers, clearly embarrassed by their superiors' comments. Others nodded slightly, their own biases reinforced by the Admiral's words. Sarah could feel the familiar burn of injustice rising in her chest, but she forced herself to remain professional. "Sir, I believe my experience speaks to my ability to handle high-pressure situations. During the Somalia extraction last year, I coordinated air support while under direct fire and successfully evacuated all personnel without casualties." The Admiral waved dismissively. "That was different. You were supporting from a distance, not making real-time decisions that affect men's lives on the ground. The SEALs need someone they can trust completely, someone who understands what they're going through." What he didn't say, but what everyone in the room understood, was his belief that a woman could never truly understand the brotherhood of combat, the unspoken bonds that form between warriors in life-and-death situations. It was an old argument, one that had been used to exclude women from combat roles for generations. Sarah's mind raced as she considered her response. She could challenge him directly, risk her career by calling out his obvious bias. She could remain silent and accept the discrimination, hoping for another opportunity in the future. Or she could find a way to prove herself that left no room for doubt. "Admiral," she said carefully, "I respectfully request the opportunity to present my operational plan to the SEAL team directly. Let them evaluate my strategic thinking and decide for themselves whether they're comfortable working under my command." The suggestion caught Hawkins off guard. He had expected either defiance or submission, not this measured challenge that put the decision in the hands of the very people he claimed to speak for. Around the table, other officers exchanged glances, recognizing the clever way Sarah had turned his argument back on itself. "The SEALs don't have time for presentations," Hawkins replied, but his tone suggested he was searching for a way to refuse without appearing unreasonable. "They need to focus on mission preparation, not evaluating potential commanders." Commander James Mitchell, the Admiral's aide, cleared his throat. "Sir, if I may, the SEAL team commander specifically requested to meet with whoever would be leading the operation. He wanted to discuss coordination protocols and ensure seamless communication during the mission." Sarah seized the opening. "Then it would be appropriate for me to present my plan as part of that coordination meeting. If the SEALs have concerns about working with me, they can voice them directly." The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning system. Admiral Hawkins found himself backed into a corner of his own making. He had claimed to be concerned about the SEALs' comfort with their mission commander, and now Sarah was offering to let them make that determination themselves. "Very well," he said finally, his voice tight with barely concealed irritation. "You'll have 30 minutes to present your plan to the SEAL team, but don't expect them to go easy on you just because of political correctness. These men have seen real combat, and they won't hesitate to voice their concerns if they think you're not up to the task." Sarah nodded crisply. "I wouldn't expect anything less, sir. When can the meeting be arranged?" "Tomorrow morning, 8:08 hours, Conference Room Delta, and Lieutenant Commander," Hawkins added, his tone carrying a warning. "I hope you're prepared for their honest assessment of your capabilities." As the meeting dispersed, Sarah remained behind, gathering her thoughts and steeling herself for what lay ahead. She knew that tomorrow's presentation would be about more than just one mission. It would be a test of everything she had worked for, a chance to prove that merit should trump prejudice in determining who leads America's warriors into battle. The weight of representing not just herself, but all the women who would follow in her footsteps, settled heavily on her shoulders. She thought about her sister, a Marine serving in Afghanistan, and her daughter, who dreamed of attending the Naval Academy. This moment wasn't just about her career. It was about breaking down barriers that had stood for far too long. That evening, Sarah worked late into the night, refining her operational plan and anticipating every possible question or challenge the SEALs might raise. She reviewed intelligence reports, studied satellite imagery, and calculated risk assessments with the precision of a surgeon planning a delicate operation. She would go into tomorrow's meeting prepared for anything, armed with facts and strategies that would speak louder than any prejudice. The stakes couldn't be higher. Success would not only secure her the command she had earned, but would also send a message throughout the military that leadership should be based on competence, not gender. Failure would reinforce every stereotype and prejudice that had held women back for generations. As she finally closed her laptop and prepared for a few hours of sleep, Sarah allowed herself a moment of quiet determination. Tomorrow, she would face the most elite warriors in the American military and prove that respect is earned through skill, courage, and leadership, regardless of gender. The Admiral might have mocked her openly, but she was about to show everyone what true strength looked like. Sarah arrived at Conference Room Delta 15 minutes early, her presentation materials organized and her mind sharp, despite having slept only 4 hours. The room smelled of strong coffee and carried the subtle tension that preceded important military briefings. She had chosen her most authoritative uniform, ensuring every detail was perfect from her polished shoes to her precisely positioned ribbons. The SEAL team members filed in exactly at 800, their presence immediately commanding attention. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They moved with the quiet confidence of men who had faced death and emerged victorious. Their leader, Commander Marcus Stone, was a legend in special operations circles. Tall and lean with intelligent gray eyes, he had led more successful missions than most officers could count. Behind Stone came his team, Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, an explosives expert with 22 years of experience, Petty Officer Thompson, a communications specialist who could establish contact from virtually anywhere, Petty Officer Williams, a sniper whose accuracy was spoken of in whispers, and Petty Officer Jackson, a medic who had saved countless lives in impossible situations. Admiral Hawkins entered last, settling into a chair at the back of the room with the air of someone expecting to witness a disaster. His smirk was barely concealed as he prepared to watch what he assumed would be Sarah's inevitable failure to impress the hardened warriors before her. "Gentlemen," Sarah began, her voice steady and confident, "I'm Lieutenant Commander Martinez, and I'll be briefing you on Operation Neptune's Trident. Before we begin, I want you to know that I consider this mission to be one of the most critical operations our forces have undertaken this year." She activated the large wall monitor, displaying a detailed satellite map of the target area. "Our objective is the extraction of Dr. Hassan Nazir, a nuclear physicist who possesses intelligence about a planned attack on American infrastructure. Dr. Nazir is currently being held in this compound, approximately 12 kilometers inland from the Syrian coast." Commander Stone leaned forward, his experienced eyes studying the terrain displayed on the screen. "What's our intelligence on enemy strength and disposition?" "Excellent question," Sarah replied, clicking to the next slide. "Surveillance indicates between 40 and 60 hostile combatants, with possible reinforcements from a nearby military installation. The compound features 3 main structures, 2 guard towers, and a communications facility here." She used a laser pointer to highlight each location with surgical precision. "The primary challenge," she continued, "is the narrow extraction window. Dr. Nazir is scheduled to be moved to a more secure facility in 72 hours. Once that happens, we lose our opportunity indefinitely." Petty Officer Rodriguez spoke up, his voice carrying the gravelly tone of someone who had seen too much combat. "What about air support? That terrain looks rough for a quick extraction." Sarah had anticipated this question. "I've coordinated with the Carl Vinson strike group to provide close air support from F-18 Hornets, positioned here." She indicated positions on the digital map. "Additionally, we'll have 2 Seahawk helicopters for primary extraction, with a 3rd on standby in case of emergencies." The SEALs exchanged glances. The level of coordination Sarah described was impressive, showing she understood the complex logistics required for special operations. But they needed more than just good planning. They needed someone who could adapt when plans inevitably went wrong. "Commander," Chief Thompson said, addressing Sarah directly, "what happens if the primary extraction zone becomes compromised? How do we adjust on the fly?" Sarah smiled slightly. This was exactly the kind of tactical thinking she had hoped to encounter. "I've identified 3 alternative extraction points, each with different advantages and risks." She displayed a new map overlay showing multiple routes. "More importantly, I'll be monitoring the operation from the command vessel, maintaining real-time communication with all units, and adjusting support based on conditions on the ground." "Real-time?" Commander Stone asked, his tone neutral but probing. "How do you maintain communication security while ensuring responsiveness?" "We'll be using the new encrypted burst communication system," Sarah explained. "I can receive situation reports every 2 minutes without compromising your position, and I can redirect air support or extraction assets within seconds of receiving your request. Petty Officer Williams, the sniper, had been quietly studying the terrain maps. The approach routes you've suggested minimize exposure, but what about overwatch positions? Where do you want me positioned to provide the best coverage? Sarah clicked to a detailed topographical view. I've identified this ridge line as optimal for overwatch. It provides clear sight lines to both the compound and the primary extraction zone while offering multiple egress routes if your position becomes compromised. The questioning continued for 20 minutes, covering everything from ammunition resupply to emergency medical evacuation procedures. With each answer, the SEAL's initial skepticism began to give way to professional respect. Sarah demonstrated not just theoretical knowledge, but the kind of practical understanding that could only come from serious study and experience. Admiral Hawkins shifted uncomfortably in his chair. This wasn't going as he had expected. The SEALs weren't dismissing Sarah, they were engaging with her as they would any competent officer. Worse, from his perspective, she was answering their questions with the kind of depth and insight that impressed even seasoned warriors. "Ma'am," Petty Officer Jackson said, using the respectful address that military personnel reserve for officers they truly respect. "What's your assessment of the risk to civilian casualties in the area?" The question revealed the moral complexity that the best special operations personnel always considered. Sarah's response would show whether she understood that their mission was about more than just tactical success. "Intelligence suggests minimal civilian presence in the immediate target area," Sarah replied. "However, I've requested updated reconnaissance 48 hours before insertion to confirm this assessment. If civilian presence is detected, we have alternative approaches that minimize risk while still achieving our objective." Commander Stone nodded slowly. Throughout his career, he had worked with many officers who saw missions in purely tactical terms, forgetting that the best operations considered both effectiveness and ethics. Sarah's answer showed she understood both aspects of leadership. "Lieutenant Commander," Stone said formally, "I have one final question. Command can sometimes mean making decisions that put good people in harm's way. How do you handle the responsibility of ordering men into dangerous situations?" The room fell silent. This was the heart of combat leadership, the burden that separated true commanders from those who merely held rank. Sarah took a moment before responding, understanding the weight of the question. "Commander," she said quietly, "I believe that if I'm not willing to face the same risks I'm asking you to take, then I have no right to give those orders. Leadership isn't about staying safe while others fight. It's about accepting responsibility for every decision and every consequence." She paused, meeting the eyes of each team member. "I can't promise you that this mission won't be dangerous, but I can promise you that every decision I make will be based on achieving our objective while bringing all of you home safely. You've trained for years to be the best at what you do. My job is to position you for success and support you with everything you need." The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. These men had heard many officers make promises about supporting their troops, but few with the genuine conviction they heard from Sarah. Commander Stone exchanged glances with his team members, reading their reactions in the subtle language of men who had fought together. "Ma'am," Stone said, his tone carrying new respect, "my team and I are satisfied with your operational plan. We're confident in your ability to command this mission effectively." Admiral Hawkins felt his face flush with embarrassment and anger. His plan to humiliate Sarah had backfired completely. The SEALs, who he claimed would never accept female leadership, were not just accepting her command, but expressing confidence in her abilities. Sarah felt a surge of triumph, but she kept her expression professional. "Thank you, Commander. I look forward to working with your team to ensure mission success." As the meeting concluded and the SEALs filed out, each one stopped to shake Sarah's hand, a gesture of respect that spoke volumes in military culture. Admiral Hawkins remained seated, his earlier confidence replaced by the realization that his prejudices had been exposed in front of the very people he claimed to represent. The tide was turning, and Sarah could sense that her moment of vindication was approaching. But she also knew that the real test lay ahead, when theoretical planning would give way to life-and-death decisions in hostile territory. 48 hours later, Sarah stood in the command center aboard the USS Hampton, surrounded by banks of monitors and communication equipment. The ship's combat information center hummed with quiet efficiency as sailors monitored radar displays and maintained contact with air support units. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the dark Mediterranean waters where, somewhere below the surface, the SEAL team was making their final approach to the Syrian coast. Neptune Base, this is Trident Team. Insertion complete. Beginning approach to target. Commander Stone's voice crackled through the encrypted communication system, calm and professional, despite the danger they faced. Copy, Trident Team. You are cleared to proceed. Air support standing by, Sarah responded, her own voice steady as she coordinated the complex operation. On the main display screen, she tracked the team's progress using satellite feeds and drone surveillance. Admiral Hawkins stood to her left, ostensibly observing the operation, but clearly hoping for any sign of failure that might vindicate his earlier skepticism. Several other senior officers were present, drawn by the significance of the mission and the unprecedented situation of a woman commanding SEAL operations. 20 minutes into the infiltration, the first complications arose. Neptune Base, we have movement from the eastern perimeter. Looks like a patrol that wasn't in our intelligence briefing, reported Chief Rodriguez. Sarah's mind immediately went to work, processing the new information against her detailed knowledge of the operational plan. Trident Team, can you bypass the patrol using Route Charlie? Negative, Neptune Base. Route Charlie takes us too close to the guard towers. We need another option. Sarah studied the real-time satellite feed, noting the patrol's movement pattern and the team's current position. In the background, she could hear Admiral Hawkins muttering something about the mission being compromised, but she blocked out the distraction and focused on the problem at hand. Trident Team, hold position. I'm analyzing the patrol pattern. She called over her communications officer. Can we get closer surveillance on that eastern sector? Within 60 seconds, a reconnaissance drone was repositioned, providing detailed imagery of the unexpected patrol. Sarah watched the guards' movement for 2 complete cycles, noting their timing and route. Her years of strategic training combined with her natural analytical abilities as she identified a solution. Trident Team, the patrol has a 7-minute cycle with a 3-minute gap at the northern checkpoint. You can advance during their next cycle using the ravine approach. Be advised, you'll have a narrow window. Copy, Neptune Base. Appreciate the real-time analysis. Moving on your mark. Sarah coordinated with the drone operator to provide continuous overwatch as the SEAL team moved through the dangerous gap. Her calm direction and precise timing allowed them to slip past the patrol undetected, but she knew this was just the beginning of the challenges they would face. 30 minutes later, another crisis emerged. Neptune Base. We've reached the compound, but the target building has been reinforced since our last intelligence update. The entry points we plan to use are now heavily fortified. Admiral Hawkins stepped forward, unable to contain himself any longer. This is exactly what I was concerned about. The mission parameters have changed, and now we have people in harm's way because of inadequate planning. Sarah didn't respond to the Admiral directly, instead focusing on the problem at hand. Trident Team, describe the new fortifications. Are we talking about additional guards or structural changes? Both, Neptune Base. Steel barriers over the windows we plan to breach, and at least 6 additional hostiles visible from our position. The command center fell silent except for the background hum of electronic equipment. Everyone present understood that this was the moment when leadership truly mattered. The easy decisions were made in briefing rooms. The difficult ones happened when lives hung in the balance and perfect plans met imperfect reality. Sarah closed her eyes for 5 seconds, running through alternatives in her mind. Then she opened them and began issuing rapid-fire orders. Trident Team, switch to Contingency Plan Delta. Chief Rodriguez, you'll need to create a distraction at the communications facility. Williams, can you get overwatch on the new guard positions from your current location? Affirmative, Neptune Base. I count 8 hostiles now, but I have clear shots on 6 of them. Perfect. Thompson, I need you to jam their communications for exactly 90 seconds, starting on my mark. Jackson, you and Stone prepare for building entry through the rear service entrance. It should still be accessible based on current imagery. The precision and speed of Sarah's adaptation impressed even the skeptical officers in the command center. She was demonstrating exactly the kind of real-time decision-making that successful special operations required. All units, this is Neptune Base. Execute revised plan in 3, 2, 1, mark. What followed was a carefully orchestrated dance of destruction and precision. Chief Rodriguez's explosive distraction drew the attention of the new guards, while Petty Officer Williams systematically eliminated threats from his overwatch position. The communication jamming prevented the enemy from calling for reinforcements, and Commander Stone's team breached the building exactly as Sarah had directed. Neptune Base, we have the package. Dr. Nazir is secure and mobile. A cheer went up from several of the junior officers in the command center, but Sarah maintained her focus. Getting to the target was only half the mission. Extraction was often the most dangerous phase. Trident Team, enemy reinforcements are approaching from the east. You have approximately 4 minutes before they reach your position. Recommend immediate extraction to Point Beta. Copy. Neptune Base, moving to extraction point. But as the team began their withdrawal, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Neptune Base, we're taking heavy fire from multiple directions. The extraction point is compromised. Sarah's heart rate increased, but her voice remained calm. Air support. This is Neptune Base. I need immediate close air support at grid reference 224557. Danger close to friendly forces. Neptune Base, this is Falcon Leader. We're inbound, but we need precise coordinates to avoid hitting the good guys. This was the moment that separated competent officers from exceptional ones. Sarah was simultaneously coordinating airstrikes, tracking enemy movements, monitoring the SEAL team's position, and calculating extraction alternatives. The complexity would have overwhelmed many experienced commanders, but she managed each element with clinical precision. Falcon Leader, target the building complex at grid 224557. Friendly forces are 100 meters north of that position and moving to grid 224573. Copy, Neptune Base, beginning attack run. The F-18 Hornets screamed overhead, their precision-guided munitions destroying the enemy strongpoints and buying the SEAL team precious time to reach the extraction zone. But even as the airstrike succeeded, new problems emerged. Neptune Base, primary extraction bird is experiencing mechanical problems. We need an alternative. Without hesitation, Sarah activated the backup extraction plan. Trident Team, proceed to Extraction Point Charlie. Backup helicopter is inbound to that location. Neptune Base, Commander Stone's voice carried new urgency. We have civilian vehicles approaching the area. Looks like we stirred up more attention than expected. Sarah quickly assessed the situation using satellite feeds and drone surveillance. The civilian vehicles could be innocent bystanders, or they could be additional enemy forces. Making the wrong call could result in civilian casualties or the loss of the SEAL team. Trident Team, the vehicles appear to be local farmers evacuating the area. Continue to Extraction Point Charlie, but be prepared to defend yourselves if the situation changes. Her assessment proved correct. The vehicles were indeed civilians fleeing the combat zone, and the SEAL team reached the extraction point without further incident. As the backup helicopter lifted off with all personnel aboard, Sarah finally allowed herself a moment of relief. Neptune Base, this is Trident Team. Package is secure, all personnel accounted for. Thanks for the excellent coordination. The command center erupted in applause. Even some of the most senior officers who had been skeptical of Sarah's appointment were now nodding their approval. Admiral Hawkins stood silent, his earlier arrogance replaced by the uncomfortable realization that he had been completely wrong. Commander Stone's voice came through the communications system one more time, but this time it was addressed to the entire command structure. Neptune Base, I want everyone listening to know that Lieutenant Commander Martinez just executed one of the finest examples of tactical command I've experienced in 20 years of special operations. Any SEAL would be proud to serve under her leadership. The words hung in the air like a challenge to anyone who still harbored doubts about women in combat leadership roles. These weren't politically correct platitudes. They were the honest assessment of warriors who knew excellence when they saw it. Admiral Hawkins approached Sarah as she completed her post-mission reports. His face was flushed with embarrassment, and for the first time in years, he struggled to find the right words. "Lieutenant Commander," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. My comments before the mission were inappropriate and unfounded. You've demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership this operation required." Sarah looked up from her paperwork, meeting his eyes directly. "Thank you, Admiral. I hope this mission helps demonstrate that military leadership should be evaluated based on competence and results, not preconceived notions about gender." Her words were respectful but firm, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had proven herself beyond any reasonable doubt. Around the command center, other officers took note of the exchange, understanding that they were witnessing a significant moment in military history. Later that evening, as news of the successful mission spread throughout the fleet, Sarah received messages of congratulation from colleagues around the world. But the most meaningful recognition came from the SEAL team itself. Commander Stone and his men had specifically requested that Sarah be considered for promotion and given command of future special operations. The mission had saved countless American lives by preventing a terrorist attack, but it had accomplished something equally important. It had proven that courage, skill, and leadership transcend gender, and that the military's greatest strength lies in recognizing and developing talent wherever it exists. Admiral Hawkins, for his part, became an unexpected advocate for women in combat roles, using his considerable influence to promote policies based on merit rather than tradition. He never forgot the lesson he learned watching a young woman coordinate a perfect operation while he stood by doubting her abilities. Sarah's success opened doors for countless other women who followed in her footsteps, but she never forgot that her achievement was built on the foundation of respect earned through competence, courage, and unwavering dedication to the mission and the people under her command. The Admiral, who had once mocked her openly, had learned that true strength knows no gender, and that leadership is defined by results, not prejudice.